Welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. This coming Saturday, 21st of September, we have the big fight itself, the record-breaking Wembley Stadium fight between Anthony Joshua and Daniel Dubois. 98,000 or whatever the bloody hell it is, 96,000 people turning up, people buying all sorts of pay-per-views, and some of us watching it via other means, if you know what I mean. Yeah, but it's a big fight that we're looking forward to. I certainly am. And no time like the present than to do a prediction and a little bit of a preview. So you don't really need me to tell you much about Anthony Joshua or Dubois. I mean, Joshua is 28 wins, 25 KOs, 3 defeats, twice to Usyk, once to Andy Ruiz, which was avenged. Dubois, 21 wins, 2 defeats, both defeat stoppages, one to Joe Joyce, one to Alexander Usyk, the common opponent. Oh, and 20 KOs in the wins column out of 21 for Dubois. So both these guys have got some wallop. And both big lads. Dubois 6'5", or listed 6'5", Joshua 6'6". When they've stood together, I get the feeling that Joshua might be a couple of inches taller, but I could be wrong. But there is an age difference. 27 years of age, Daniel Dubois, and I think it is 34 for Joshua. I think it is, 34. And both these guys are in very, very good form. So for Joshua, you're talking after the 2 Usyk defeats, both of them on points. One of them was a split decision. One of them was a unanimous decision. They should both have been unanimous decisions because there's no way on God's green earth Joshua beat Usyk in either of those fights. But he has gone on a four fight run during which it's been quite intriguing because he's changed trainers again after the second Usyk fight. He went to Derek James, had a couple of fights with him. Then he went on to train with Ben Davison, and I think it's the latter matchup pairing that has paid dividends for Joshua because Joshua has always hit hard. He's got a ton of experience now. He's had the tremendous highs of being a 2-time unified champ, and he's had some very low lows, very deep lows, And he had his little meltdown after the second Usyk fight, threw the belts out of the ring, rambled inanely, incoherently almost, into the microphone, kind of stole Usyk's thunder a little bit. But Usyk is such a class act, he didn't seem to mind. And Joshua apologised afterwards. He was very, very emotional in the post-fight press conference, broke down crying and all that. The man's only human. That's a lot of pressure to have. But you know what? If there's one criticism of Joshua that's been consistent, it's that he overthinks things. And that is why I think the pairing with Ben Davison is perfect. Because Ben Davison is a very cerebral sort of guy. He's very highly analytical. He's actually a very, very good trainer, and he will take that second guessing, that studying of the minutiae of each and every opponent, what could happen, what might happen, what should happen, what won't happen. He'll take all those, it's almost like bits on a chessboard. Where am I going to move next? And, if he moves there, I move there. He'll cover all that. Okay? Freeing up Joshua, who seems to trust the guy, to work on boxing technique, enhancing his power, working of ways to open up the opponent to deal with to use the power. And if you look at the 4 fights that he had since the Usyk, the 2 Usyk defeats, the first one was against Jermaine Franklin Jr., which was a 12-round decision against a guy who'd only been beaten before by Dillian Whyte. And he stung Dillian quite badly in one of those rounds, but kind of lost the fight. Weren't a lot in it, but Dillian, I thought, clearly won that fight. No doubt that AJ beat Franklin, but he still looked a little bit reticent, a little bit tentative, jabbing a bit. And that, of course, was when he was with Derek James, the first fight with James. Second fight was against Robert Helenius when the Dillian Whyte fight fell through because Whyte failed another PED test. Helenius did give AJ problems, blooded his nose, blooded his mouth, but got spectacularly knocked out in the 7th round, so it ended up being a highlight reel knockout. Then we have Otto Wallin, in which AJ looked very, very good, admittedly against a guy who he'd sparred an awful lot and had reportedly always got the better of. Wallin, of course, came in with 26 wins and 1 defeat. The defeat was to Tyson Fury, and he badly cut Fury, and that fight could easily have been stopped in Wallin's favour, but he didn't get a sniff against AJ, didn't get a look in at all. Retired after 5 rounds, and then AJ again had another highlight reel knockout, tremendous knockout against Francis Ngannou, who came in with the spectacular professional heavyweight record of 0 wins, 1 defeat. It was a controversial defeat, though, let's not forget that, and no draws, and promptly got flattened in 2 rounds by AJ. Now, the knock against that is that AJ has not faced good opposition. Wallin's not a bad fighter, probably a B- heavyweight. Franklin, probably a B- heavyweight. Helenius, C, maybe. Ngannou, an unknown commodity. I mean, he came in with that, that controversial defeat to Tyson Fury. I thought Fury won that fight. A lot of people say, "Oh, Ngannou got robbed." No, he didn't. He floored Fury and he gave him another round or 2, but Fury won most of the rounds. Admittedly, Joshua did to Ngannou what Fury should have done to him. And I think Fury himself has acknowledged that. A rare moment of lucidity and honesty and clarity and sincerity from Mr. Fury, but fair play, credit where it's due. So AJ very much, he has rebuilt, 4 wins on the bounce, and he hasn't looked bad, especially recently. Sometimes I know that Ngannou was a soft touch, and Wallin, he was always going to beat Wallin. I didn't think Wallin could handle AJ's power or skills, to be honest with you. But sometimes it's how you get your work done. Like he wasn't that impressive against Helenius, but it was a spectacular knockout. I thought he was very impressive against Wallin, but it was a 5-round retirement. Sometimes, the highlight reels can be a little deceptive. But if you look at Daniel Dubois, he's rebuilt following his defeat to Usyk. Now, that was a 9th-round KO. And believe it or not, that was only in August of last year. So it was only just over a year ago. But he's rebuilt much quicker with only 2 opponents since then. But they've been a much higher quality in comparison to most of the guys that AJ's faced. The first one was Jarrell Miller, undefeated in 27 fights, 26 wins, 1 draw. Miller, serial PED, cheat. In my opinion, shouldn't even be boxing. Came in like the proverbial melted chocolate sundae. 333 pound, wasn't he? Something like that. 330 pounds. Oh, what the hell it was. He was a fat bastard anyway. And this was actually quite potentially, when you consider the styles, this was a difficult fight for Dubois, coming off a 9-round KO when he quit. He absolutely quit against Usyk. He took the count and then stood up at 10.5, 11, knowing damn well that he wanted out. He'd quit. And he was demoralised and he was confused. He didn't know what happened. He'd given up trying to win, thinking how he could win. He was just completely, he just had all the spirit and the belief drained out of him by, Alexander Usyk, who is a magnificent fighter, truly magnificent fighter. Now, against Miller, he was asked a few questions in the middle rounds, because Miller, the one thing Miller does, being such a fat cunt, is that he'll put, enormous pressure on you, and he will smother you and drown you with pressure. Smother you and drown you. Can't do both, can you? One or the other. And he was doing that. Make no mistake about it. He was doing that against Dubois. In the 5th round, he was really getting close. And I was someone who, I thought this is a bad matchup for Dubois, especially coming off the quit against Usyk. What's going to happen here? But he got the job done. He rode out that storm. He actually steeled himself and showed some inner metal that we didn't know he had, and some character, and he got the job done. He ended up stopping Miller in the 10th and final round. There was only a handful of seconds left, maybe 8, 9, 10 seconds left, whatever it was. But he got the job done. And I think questions were asked about his heart, and his technique wasn't bad. I mean, he was using the jab well, pinging Miller, and not too bad with his feet. But he actually met fire with fire. which for a guy who in his previous fight had quit, it's almost like he thought, "I'm right, that's it. I've quit again. I've really got to redeem myself." And he actually showed great character in, sucking up the doubts and spitting them out, which is difficult to do. He then went on to fight Filip Hrgović, and if there was no one greater than Filip Hrgović who had the belief that I'm going to knock out Daniel Dubois, he did not seem to take Dubois seriously. I've said in a couple of my previous videos, he was so indifferent, disdainful, he didn't even bother having his hair cut. It was flipping and flopping all over the place. And he was extremely arrogant coming in, and he got his arse handed to him. Now, you can talk about Dubois' head going in, and yes, I agree, there were some headbutts going in there, but they're not playing ping pong. They're having a scrap, they're having a fight. And if someone does that to you, you've got to do it back to them. So whack him in the bollocks, or, headbutt him yourself, or elbow him, or do something. I mean, if the referee's not looking after you, you've got to go in there and do it yourself. It's like, if you want to have a street fight, we'll have a street fight. But Hrgović, no doubt, was the favourite coming in, regardless of Dubois' performance against Miller. And Dubois was a revelation in one sense, in that the self-belief he showed and the aggression and the tenacity was tremendous. The downside of that is that he was hit with a lot of right hands. And if Dubois', confidence, or reborn confidence and aggression and all that stuff, that piss and wind that goes with it, piss and vinegar that goes with it, if that has a downside, it's that he might leave himself wide open, which he was definitely doing against Hrgović. And I think Hrgović was hitting him clean with right hands, and Hrgović was thinking, Christ, I didn't think this guy would be able to take these punches. But Dubois, to his credit, did so and outgutted Hrgović. He really took him to the well, and Hrgović discovered the well was dry, and that was the end of him. Luckily, I mean, it was stopped on cuts. He had cuts over both eyes. And that was I think it was for the interim IBF title. Now, since then, Dubois has been promoted, for want of a better word, to the full-fledged IBF champ, because Usyk's given up the belt. He sort of chucked it in the bin. You have that. Go on, You and my leftovers can fight for this belt. I'm sure he's not that arrogant, but Usyk, he's a funny guy. I love Usyk. I think he's really, really great. But make no mistake about it, this IBF belt is a good little bargaining chip to have. So whoever picks this up will be, why not, an undisputed fight with Usyk or Fury, if Fury wins it further down the line. Fury, of course, is rematching Usyk. I favour Usyk strongly, but you never know. Fury might win it. You just don't know. It wouldn't be entirely shocking. So you've got a guy who has rebuilt over the course of getting on for 2 years, which is Joshua's had 4 comeback fights and done very well. You've got a guy who's rebuilt over just over a year, has only had 2 comeback fights, but the 2 comeback fights that Dubois has had have been against, I would say, far more dangerous men than Joshua's faced. Then there's the issue, I mentioned Ben Davison with Joshua. What about Don Charles with Dubois? Because when this was first mentioned as a pairing, I thought that's a very good pairing. Because Don Charles is he's in his 60s, I think he's 63, Don Charles. He's got that fatherly, demeanour about him. He's a no-nonsense guy. When I lived in South London when I was a kid, a lot of my black friends, you'd meet their dads. A lot of them reminded me of Don Charles. A lot of the guys I knew were from the Caribbean, Jamaican, for example. Don, I think, his roots are in Africa. But there is a similarity there, that he's kind of a no-nonsense boundary guy, very respectable guy. But he doesn't take any nonsense off anyone, and he will tell you what's what. At the same time, he understands that, sometimes an arm around the shoulder is necessary rather than a kick up the arse, and occasionally you need to do both. So Don, I thought, would suit Daniel perfectly, because Daniel, does come across, even now, he's 27 now, he turned pro at 19, of course. Was it 18? 19, I think. He does come across as being quite a gentle soul in some respects, quite young, emotionally young, and I'm trying to put this politely, like a little boy, you know what I mean? Like, it was so funny when he was during the press conference for the Jamel Miller fight. Jarrell Miller calls himself Big Baby. Massive fat cunt baby would be a better description. But Joshua said, Dubois said, every baby needs to get a spanking from his daddy. And he was so chuffed that he'd come up with that line, which he probably rehearsed in the mirror the day before. And he didn't give a fuck that Miller was taking the piss out of him. It's like, hey, I got my dig in. And everyone's going, go on, Daniel, go on, give it to him. You know? But he's got that kind of little boy, image, attitude, demeanour. And I like the guy. I think Daniel comes across as being a nice fella. I like AJ too. I got no horse in this race. I want the best man to win, you know. But yeah, I think Don Charles in with Daniel is a very, very good matchup, and has definitely increased his chances of defeating AJ. Definitely. Now, the mental health. Well, yeah, all right, mental health. But let's go with the mental strength. Let's concentrate on that. Who's got more mental strength? Because I think this fight might come down to that. I mean, yes, they both hit hard. They're both quite capable of knocking each other out. I've no doubt about that. First of all, who's got the better mental strength? Well, even though Daniel has shown a lot that we didn't think he had, or probably suspect he didn't have, in his two comeback fights against Hrgovic and Miller, I still think that if he's under the cosh and he's run out of ideas, there's still a question mark above him. Whereas I think AJ has come through adversity. Like, again, he got knocked out by Ruiz. As we know, he was bounced around the canvas like a basketball. But he came back, adjusted his tactics, and won the rematch. Very cautiously. It was a dull fight and so on. But he at least, kind of stuck a skewer in that, that demon that was plaguing him. That's not to say that that you won't get flashbacks if he's hit hard and floored again to the Ruiz fight. He might well do. But likewise, I think if Dubois goes on the floor, how's he going to react? I would say that the mental strength side of things is probably, I would give AJ the edge. And I think they've both shown, improvements, shall we say. And these are guys that get into stadiums and fight in front of millions of people watching through one platform or another, in front of tens of thousands of people who are there watching. These are not weak men. You're not weak if you get into a fucking boxing ring and swap blows with someone who's fucking nearly, 18 stone or whatever. Only a fool would call them weak. But of course, we all have buttons that can be pressed. We all have vulnerabilities because we're human beings, and no one is infallible, is what I'm saying. No one. But I do give Joshua a slight edge. Who has the better chin? I would say Dubois has the better chin. Now, that's not to say that Joshua can't knock him out, because he most certainly can if he clips him as many times as Hrgovic clipped him. And Hrgovic is a pretty stiff puncher. Don't get me wrong, but Joshua can wallop, can really hit hard. And if he hits Dubois at the very least, he'll shake him. Don't forget, Dubois was on the floor 3 times against Kevin Lorena, a cruiserweight. And okay, he got caught cold, clipped on top of the head, injured his knee and all the rest of it. But who's to say Joshua won't do that, catch him early? You just don't know, And also, he came back well in that Lorena fight. It was disturbing to see him on the floor so many times, but he did come back well and knock out Lorena, even though Lorena is just a small cruiserweight, very, very small heavyweight, barely a bridgerweight, I'd say. So, yeah, the better chin I would give to Dubois, although I'm not saying he can't be knocked out. Skills-wise, I would say in terms of actual boxing skills, Joshua has the edge. I think Dubois has a decent jab, has been neglecting it a little bit in the last couple of fights, because he's really fallen in love with his own power. Joshua, under Ben Davison, Joshua really does seem to be combining that experience, boxing skills and power very, very, in a very balanced way. With Dubois, I don't quite see that balance there. And Dubois can box a bit as well. He's not a lousy boxer, but he does seem to be falling in love with his power a bit too much. Everything's got to be a big hurtful right hand. There isn't much variety going on. In terms of footwork, again, I would give AJ definitely the edge there. Not that Dubois' footwork is bad. He's not completely flat-footed. But I think AJ's footwork is actually quite underrated. I think AJ's boxing skills are underrated. So when you variety of punch, better overall talent, again, I would go with Joshua. And again, I'm not saying Dubois is untalented. Of course not. He is talented. Can Dubois beat AJ? Yes. Can he knock him flat, knock him out? Yes. Can he knock him out early? Yes. But I'm going to pick AJ to win this fight. I just think he has a bit too much savvy, a bit too much of everything. The experience, I definitely think, will come into it. Don't forget, AJ, that he was at Wembley Stadium selling out the place with Vladimir Klitschko. That was many years ago now. So he's been there and done it. Not that he'll be complacent, but I still think he will, there'll be a fair bit of more of an ability to control the occasion. Let's put it that way. The occasion itself. Will the occasion get to Daniel? It shouldn't do, because he's been on big stages before, but not one that big. But I'm going to say it ain't going to get to him. I'm going to say he's going to handle it okay. As long as he sees his dad at ringside and Don Charles in the corner, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. He's got that, metaphorical arm around the shoulder looking after him. But I do think that overall skills, it's not the power, although AJ's power is a main weapon. It's the overall skills, that, like I was saying a moment ago, that balance between the skills and the power, throwing the experience as well. Better footwork. I see AJ outboxing Dubois. Dubois will come in, look at the clock. I think he'll be quite cavalier. AJ will be a little bit more circumspect, sort of pump the jab a bit more and bring the right hand over when he's a bit more comfy, when he's found his rhythm. He'll be a bit more intelligent. He'll have the higher ring IQ, which I think AJ, ring IQ versus experience, do they overlap? They probably do. But I definitely think that AJ will be able to handle Dubois, survive any sort of bumps in the road, any sort of lunges, any sort of salvos that Dubois puts on him. Dubois might try to rough him up, stick the head in. I think if AJ sticks to his game plan, doesn't allow that to unsettle him, yeah, I think AJ will eventually catch Dubois, and I think there'll be heavy knockdowns, and I would expect him to knock out Dubois between the 6th and the 8th round, 6, 7, 8. That's those sort of rounds. 6, 7, 8. In a weird sort of way, I see this being kind of like the Hellenius fight, not in the sense that, Hellenius did bloody AJ's nose and mouth, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Hellenius bears any resemblance to Dubois. He doesn't. But they both hit very, very hard, and they both can be dangerous, and they both have a pretty decent jab. You know what I mean? Which can give AJ probably jab with the jab. You don't hook with the hooker. So I see Dubois giving AJ maybe some problems, something to think about anyway, making him earn the rounds. But I just think that AJ, once he settles in, will manage to open up Dubois, and Dubois will get caught, floored heavily. He might get up, and I think AJ will knock him out. I think 6th round, 8th round, that sort of time. Anyway, so that is my... God, this has been a long video, but that's my breakdown and prediction for this excellent fight that's coming up. Give me your predictions below. Let me know what you think. Let me know who you think is going to win, and let me know why you think they're going to win, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. Leave it all underneath in the comments section. I'll have a read. It's going to be a good one. Hot to trot, this one. Good fight. Good card, actually. And I'll do some more videos about the undercard later on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for sitting through this very long video. Much love to you, and bye for now.